I've been waiting to share this moment with you for a long time. Dr. Doug Lyle, my first guest on the Jerry Pujols Project 2.0. Please look him up on Google, see his credentials, and see why I'm so excited that the author of The Pleasure Trap is here with me today. I hope you can sit back, have an open mind. What he's going to share with you in the realm of evolutionary science that has everything to do with why we are stuck in a pleasure trap and in eating the wrong foods which affect our health and how we feel is game changing. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please hit us with a subscribe and a like, hit the little bell, way you see when other things like this are coming. On our next episode, we're going to have Dr. Goldhammer, who's also a co-author on The Pleasure Trap with Dr. Lyle. And I am overjoyed to be able to bring this to you and share it with you. Certainly, these are the mentors that have helped me get this far. I also believe they will help me get the rest of the way. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. Bye.
Hey there.
Hi, Dr. Lyle. How are you?
And about yourself?
Good, man. How often do people say they feel like they know you?
Oh, I think quite a bit. Yeah. That's where people have gotten to, my old clients used to walk through the door, in Santa Rosa, but these days it's online. So
all over the world, I'm sure.
Sure. So you're in Santa Rosa?
I'm in Napa.
Napa. All right. Very cool.
Where are you at now? Are you in Santa Rosa?
No, I'm in Sacramento.
Okay. So you live closer to Chef AJ?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got it.
I think that's probably strategic for people like you because you're so close to the coolest airport in the world.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, fabulous. Easy, convenient, just couldn't be any better.
Every time that I have to get to the airport, I always choose Sacramento whenever I can out of all three, right?
Yeah.
But I just kept thinking, man, if we live close to here, it'd be too easy.
Yeah.
Too easy. And Sacramento's a nice place, so it's great.
Exactly. You got it.
Oh, I love it.
All right. Well, tell me a story. What are we working on? What are we trying to get better?
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for putting me into your schedule and in your calendar. I appreciate it. That was really short notice.
Sure. No worries.
So I wrote some questions down so I would kind of keep a thread.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even going to read your bio, but I thought if I do that, I'd probably lose the hour. So thank you.
Yeah, don't worry about
it. Thank you, man. It's amazing. So my whole thing is literally, I think it's downright food addiction, and it's been the vice. It's never been drugs or never been the other things that people use to cope. But for me, it's been this. Probably a kid that grew up with some degree of dysfunctionality and not enough food in the refrigerator and that type of thing. And food became the thing that when I started to become successful in any way where I can actually buy whatever I wanted, then you just buy whatever you wanted. And it's been all the way from 18 years old, 17 years old in New York City to doing some commercial modeling to almost 300 pounds, So I've covered the gamut and also the psychological gamut along with it. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, I have all these fears and trepidations about losing weight because then there's the body dysmorphia that comes in with the disappointment of, you're 56 years old, you're not going to look like Brad Pitt no matter what. So there's a lot there. And you're a big part of the reason why I'm this far along in the journey is listening to you, going and visiting out at TrueNorth and spending a little time there. And things are really clicking, and it's almost like, in a weird way, you guys are making it almost too easy for me. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense. I mean, the weight is just literally like melting at a rate that I didn't even know was ever possible, in a way where I'm never, ever slightly hungry.
Right.
And all I've had to do is just remove these things that keep me in that trap, as stated in your book.
Yeah.
So it's my fears now are, okay, I'm 50 something pounds down, probably approaching 60 pounds. I have another 50 to go from what Dr. Weiss told me at TrueNorth to have a really healthy BMI. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, that's kind of what comes next. And how do I, because the last time I lost about 70 or 80 pounds, I went to therapy to cope and deal with that. And as I was going to therapy, I got fatter and fatter and fatter, and I put all the weight back on. But my therapist and I ended up dealing with a lot of childhood trauma that was still there, and it wasn't why I went there. I love how you're rolling your eyes, so I want to. Here we go.
It's ridiculous. Their childhood trauma has nothing to do with adult functioning.
Good.
So this is a worldwide, really pretty catastrophic misunderstanding of human psychological functioning. It got its huge push in the back from Sigmund Freud over 100 years ago, and Freud had absolutely no evidence and no data. It was not a new theory. It was certainly a theory that was bandied around in the world and always has been. Freud gave it an aura of authority that he didn't have, and it went unquestioned in psychodynamic circles, all the way up to the present. It has not been a serious player in legitimate academic scientific psychology as a concept. Now, more recently, in the 1990s or so, a bunch of people, I think it started at Kaiser somewhere, that they said that they discovered this amazing correlation between people that were having trouble with their health and their weight and addictions, that that they had been abused as children. They didn't discover anything of the kind. Okay, they concocted this. That whoever says they discovered is lying, and they have concocted a bunch of bogus research around what's called adverse childhood experiences. This is now part of a huge amount of basic fraud that is taking place, and that is psychologizing this concept, and moving it into what looks like mainstream science, when in fact all of the science that they conduct is bogus. There is no truth to the idea that if you are abused as a child, you're more likely to be an addict, you are more likely to be overweight, you are more likely to be depressed at some point, you're more likely to be suicidal, you're more likely to have a drinking problem of any kind, you're more likely to get a divorce, you're more likely to get fired from a job. There is no correlation coefficient between abusive processes in your childhood and adult functioning. Okay. The only correlation, there's a small correlation coefficient that drives through there, which is genetic. In other words, horrendous parents, give rise to horrendous children by virtue of passing on horrendous genes. But a great deal of the people that suffer some kind of abusive process are not horrendous genetically. And the abuse may not come as a result of, for example, their direct parents. And even if there was their direct parents, it's probably one of the parents, and therefore they only got half of the genes from that parent. So therefore they're not as haywire as the parent was that did the abusing. So the bottom line is that when you control for genetics, which you must control for with respect to anything, you find that there is no impact of childhood traumatic process in all of the things that everybody thinks that are impacting adult process. Okay. Now, before you have other questions, I will essentially elaborate on this point for a minute, because and you went to freaking therapy for years about it, and of course the therapy backfired. And you're not going to improve anybody's functioning by going back and talking to them about all the little trials and tribulations of their childhood. Now, let me explain. I know this is about diet. We'll circle back down to it, but it's such a massive misunderstanding and such a worldwide attention to this that you see in the pleasure trap that I'm arguing. Actually, I don't take it on directly, but what I don't do is I don't argue against anything. I basically say, no, this is how it is. The reason why you have trouble with food is because the food is super normal. Okay, the food now has drug-like properties that hyperactivate the dopamine pathway. If I put you back in a natural history environment, you don't have any problem with food at all. None. You won't systematically overeat. You won't get fat. Your body composition will go exactly to where it belongs. Okay. You won't have high blood pressure. That'll be gone. Why? Because we'll get rid of the the 15x sodium that you are now eating in the modern environment that is not part of what it is that human natural history was. People today are literally consuming on average at least 5,000 milligrams of sodium a day, where in your natural history you consume 200 or 300. So that you're not going to be obese, you're not going to have high blood pressure, you're not going to have extraordinary amounts of oil and animal food, you're going to have modest amounts of animal food and no oil. The animal food that you do eat is going to be pristine wild game. It's going to be a hell of a lot healthier than anything that you would eat now. It's going to be wrapped in nothing other than unprocessed whole plant food. By the time you get there, you don't have any cardiovascular disease. So now we back the camera up and we say, well, what the heck do you have? Well, you don't have high blood pressure. You don't have cardiovascular disease. You are not obese, okay? And you're eating all that you want. So where exactly is the childhood trauma? Oh, they didn't have any childhood trauma in the Stone Age. They didn't have any trouble. Everybody was super well behaved and there wasn't any stress and all the parents got along and there was no bully in the village. You've got to be freaking kidding me. Okay. So everybody thinks that life got terrible for children starting about when? 1970 in the United States? No, that's not what happened. And that's not why people have the problems that they have with food. They have problems with food because the American manufacturing capabilities became brilliant by 1970. And they were able to actually put food together in combinations and in ways and make it cheap in a way that it had never been done before. The drive-through restaurant wasn't invented until 1967. Okay, so no, your childhood has absolutely nothing to do with this journey. Trauma improves the functioning of brains. That is the point of having post-traumatic memory. If you are a rabbit that is watching a fox, you have the ability to watch that fox pass behind a tree and remember that it is still there. The purpose of memory is to improve the functioning of the organism, to improve its ability to perceive the environment. Now, do you think that when the fox wanders off and it sees it wander off and it sees it disappear over the hill, that it is still terrified of what's behind the tree? No. Its memory function updates to its new set of circumstances in the environment. Okay. If you were tailgating and damn near hit somebody 4 years ago in an auto accident or did, then you may remember forever to not tailgate. Okay. That's helpful. It didn't hurt your brain. It didn't disrupt your functioning. And I'll tell you what it certainly didn't do. It didn't make you suddenly unable to deal with interpersonal conflict with your boss. No, the way memory changes when that rabbit sees a fox disappear behind the tree, it doesn't then later remember that its little sister has a hurt paw. No. When your experiences are remembered in a way that is beneficial to the organism's ability to behave in the future. If memory, particularly of traumatic situations, if traumatic, i.e. important situations, decreased the ability of the organism to function effectively, then there would never be any proteins and genes coded for making those brain changes. You'd be better off not remembering at all. The entire purpose of memory function in animals is to improve your functioning in the future should you face similar threats in the future. Not if you face anything in the future, only if you face similar, extremely similar threats in the future, okay? So people do not eat and have emotional eating because they have problems in their frickin' childhood. If you had problems in your frickin' childhood, the only thing that you would carry over in your adulthood are memories of that. So that like, oh, you got beat up by your uncle? Well, then in that case, you may not want to see your uncle, or you may be very angry when you come around your uncle. And if your uncle ever asks you for money in his doddering old age, you're going to tell him, go pound sand, buddy. I'm still waiting for my apology.
You know, my uncle.
Yeah, you're not cowering because of your uncle, and you're not even cowering behind people now that look like your uncle.
Yeah.
Okay. Your memory systems have updated. So the whole entire notion of adverse childhood experiences causing things like obesity is utterly absurd, and it has its derivatives in Sigmund Freud, who had a very convoluted set of BS theories that are so sexy and interesting. And basically what they do is they employ a bunch of ignoramuses known as psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists. And they also give people the excuse or an understanding or framework for trying to understand their own failures. But the truth is that they are either looking for excuses because they actually don't know what the hell to do about it and can't fix it, or they are not looking for excuses, but they're looking for explanations, and they're listening to people that are apparently learned who are not. Okay, so no, the reason why people are obese is two reasons, are overwhelmingly two reasons. The most important reason, I'm not sure which one you would call most important because they're intertwined. They are genetics and environment. Okay, so it is not your past childhood experiences. No trauma causes you from 30 years ago would cause you to then get in your car and then spin wheelies in the middle of a parking lot, would it? Of course not. Okay, that whatever happened to you, if it was your uncle that beat you up repeatedly when you were a child, you would be, the thing that would disturb you would be meeting your uncle today. It wouldn't be, meeting your best friend from high school. Oh, but then my best friend met my uncle, and then that's associated so that, no, of course not. That would be the rabbit, completely having some memory about something that's irrelevant to the problems that it's facing in its current situation. Okay, so this is an absolute total fiasco, and the people that have perpetrated it are, that systematically and knowingly have perpetrated this are criminals. Okay, and they seek grant money, and World Health Organization pats on the head, as well as a bunch of money being directed towards it. And meanwhile, people like yourself who legitimately have what? A problem between your genetics and your environment. Okay, in case anybody wants to know, whether or not you are having a problem with fat has absolutely nothing to do with your childhood history or how you were fed as a child. Nothing. Okay, the only correlation coefficient is your genetics. Your genetics are responsible for 80% of the variance in the fatness that you see in human beings. 80% of the variance. Okay, that's the same reason you're the height that you are, the same reason you have the eye color that you do, the same reason you have the native intelligence that you have, the same reason you have the native athleticism that you have, the same reason that you have the beauty that you have. All of those things. Oh no, beauty's because my mother helped me shape my face well as a child. Like hell. Oh, I'm very athletic because my dad had me out in the weight room. Oh, really, Michael? Okay. No, you have a 48-inch vertical leap. Okay, so no, your athleticism is native to your genetics. Your intelligence is native to your genetics. Oh no, I studied really hard. That made me smarter. No, it didn't. School quality has absolutely nothing to do with people's performance after they leave high school. None. Doesn't matter if you go to the best schools in the world as a prep school, it will not influence your collegiate capabilities. Those capabilities are defined by two things, your genetics and your personal motivation. Okay? But your genetics overwhelmingly constrain it. Nobody wants to hear this message. This message, the reason why you're having trouble at 35 with the problems you're having trouble with your 35 with are two things, the situation that you're in and your genetics. Okay? If you are fat at 35, you are fat for exactly two reasons. You have fat genes and you are eating food that is really rich. Well, why can't I stop myself from eating the food that's really rich? Easy. Your genetics make it exceedingly difficult for you to make that choice because you're not designed by nature to make that choice. You're designed by nature to eat the richest food in the environment. That's what every single animal under the sun and the moon does. If they have a choice between the richer food, they eat the richer food. Why? Because the entire system of all life is predicated around a single fundamental principle, which is energy conservation. It is, in fact, how can you transform energy into the DNA molecule? So therefore, that's why every predator all over the world automatically and innately goes after the weak, the sick, the slow, the isolated, and the injured. They do that because they must save precious energy. That's why the geese fly in a V pattern. They're drafting on each other to save energy. That's why fish swim in school. They're drafting on it to save energy. That's how, Mario Andretti wins the Indianapolis 500. He drafts on the guy in front of him to save a little bit of energy, okay? This is the nature of life. That's why plants don't have roots 2 times deeper than they need to be. They have them exactly how deep they need to be for the characteristically highest wind that they will ever face in that habitat, okay? The reason why that person's fat at 35 is they are designed by nature to eat the richest food in the environment. Period. End of subject. We do not need to go to a further explanation. Okay. So why is that person fat, but that person's thin? Well, that thin person is eating the richest food in the environment too, but they don't have the genetics to save that fat. Okay. So that's the story. And the struggle that you're having will be an omnipresent, never-ending battle, because you are designed by nature to do what? Eat the richest food in the environment. And what are you going to need to do to keep the weight off? Don't do it.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what are we going to do about that? It's going to be a hell of a fight.
The environment does have a lot to do with it, doesn't it?
The environment has everything to do with it. All we have to do is go back 150 years and we'll find out there are no fat people.
I love that. It's
okay.
So true.
If you go, well, of course, there's a few kings and queens.
There's not even cavities.
Yeah.
There's not even, I told my dentist the other day, I said, you're not getting a cavity from me forever because I'm just not going with it.
Yeah. Well, you will if you eat a bunch of fruit. You eat more fruit than you were designed for.
Yes.
But the bottom line is, Jerry, is that you are now fully discovering at a time where you're still youthful enough. I mean, you say you're 56.
Yeah.
God, you're incredibly youthful looking. So you were gifted with great genes as far as that goes. But your job now is to, don't blow it. So now you've spent a lifetime essentially eating a diet that was overly rich. And guess what? You had the genes to stock the food.
Yeah.
You probably have, 80th percentile fat genes. Yeah. And so by the way, you have lots and lots and lots of genes that are associated with fat storage. Yeah. So it isn't one gene or 2 genes. That's why you don't see 3 morphologies. You don't see one guy's 50 pounds overweight, another guy's 25, and another guy's not. No, you see every variation. And the reason why is that it's a bell curve of how many fat genes you have. So there are probably more than 1,000 genes are associated with how fat people are. Okay, and but so if you're throwing those genes against the modern environment, and then we find out what happens when people are eating their food is probably averages 1,000 calories a pound when it's designed to average 700.
Yeah.
So sort of a curiosity that shows you that there's limits and there's more to this is that people don't just sit down and eat butter all day long. But that would be the richest thing. Okay, so if they just literally took out sticks of butter and chomped on sticks of butter, that would be the richest food that you could possibly eat at 4,000 calories a pound. It's interesting that they don't do that. Okay, so what they do though is they eat, chicken fried steak. Okay, so it's actually quite a ways from butter. So the chicken is 1,000 calories a pound, and the breading they put on there is 1,600 calories a pound, and then the oil is 4,000 calories a pound. So the whole thing adds up to 1,900 calories a pound. Yeah. So it is way richer than what you were designed to be eating down at 700. Okay, peanut butter.
It sure goes down easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, peanut butter sandwiches.
Go down easy.
Peanut butter sandwiches, 1,600 calories a pound bread, 3,200 calories a pound peanut butter, 1,600 calories a pound jelly. It all comes together. It's probably 2,300 calories a pound. What it's mimicking, and the reason why people want to eat that is that it's mimicking steak.
Yeah.
So it's going to turn out that these rich foods, they mimic the richest food that our ancestors ate, which was animal flesh. And the animal flesh would be more or less 1,000 calories a pound. So the food stuffs that people are getting into today are actually mimics of meat, but they're even richer. So let me give you an example of the classic American meal is a hamburger. Okay. So if we look at that, it has steak in it. So it's got a hamburger in it. Okay. Except that hamburger, first of all, is not the same thing as the steak off of a wild game, because it's actually been bred to be highly fat content. So it's much higher in calorie density. And then notice that it's not a slice of steak, it's been ground up. If it's been ground up, it's actually less energy to chew it. Okay. And less energy to digest it. It is substantially less energy to chew it and digest it. It's about 12% less energy to digest it. It means it's increasing the effective calorie density of the steak by 12%. Okay. But then it's going to turn out that you're going to put it on bread, which is 1,600 calories a pound, as opposed to the hamburger, which is 1,000. So literally the bread is more calorie dense than the burger. And then you put cheese on it, which is a totally unnatural food of a cow, where we slice the cream off the top and you turn it into cheese. That's 1,700 calories a pound. So it's substantially more calorie dense than the hamburger. And then you put mayonnaise on it, which is 4,000 calories a pound. So actually, the hamburger itself is the least calorie dense thing on that thing.
True.
Okay. So, and then you put a pickle on there, which is a highly salted little thing. Okay. Then you have French fries, which nobody would even eat if they weren't dunked in oil, which is 4,000 calories a pound. And then we would salt them up, and then we would dip it in ketchup, which is full of sugar. So it's like, holy smokes. When you look at what people are eating and what passes for a meal, what it is unbelievable supernormal stimuli. Is it any mystery why they systematically overeat? Okay. So that is our problem. And of course, the people that are producing it aren't evil. If you don't produce that food, you're going to be broke. Okay. So because everybody's going to want that food, because they're animals that are seeking the highest calorie density they can get their hands on. So the only food that you're going to find in this environment, pretty much, is going to be food that's going to be concocted ingeniously to actually be as rich as possible with really interesting variety. And we're going to ask this animal not to eat it? It's like telling your dogs, don't eat the treats in the bowl on the left, eat the really healthy food on the bowl on the right. There's no way in hell that's going to happen.
You know, the treats on the bowl on the left are really easy to chew. You don't have to really chew.
And they're moist.
Yeah.
Kind of greasy.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course that.
They light up like a tree.
Exactly. So anyway, this is now, you've now walked into the TrueNorth cult. You know what I mean?
I love it.
And so,
God,
you got Alan, who's way harder nosed than I am. If you ever
I
let
love that too, by the way. I love the yin and the yang of you too, because the good cop, bad cop has worked really well for me. I have to say.
That's good. Yeah, my attitude, I will tell you a few things that I think are really worth knowing. So the first thing is that the diet that Alan would have you eat is not natural. So this is interesting. Now he thinks it is because let me tell you a few sources of error. So it's going to turn out that my friends in the vegan world don't like to hear the following fact. Following fact is that our ancestors ate a lot of meat. Lots of it.
Yeah.
Okay. It is prized. They work extremely hard to get it. They risk their lives for it. Okay. Meat is a super big deal for human beings. That isn't just some human beings. That's every single hunter-gatherer tribe that we have ever had under anthropological investigation, which includes more than 175 tribes over the last 100 years. In every single case, they prize animal food and they work very hard and take huge risks to get it. Okay, now the vegans don't want to hear this, don't tell me that. Okay, so the problem is that this leaves the intelligent and interested vegan in the following set of circumstances. They think, well, what's the, we know that processing that food and adding much oil, we know that's bad. So what should we be eating? So Alan would say raw vegetables, i.e. salad, then cooked vegetables, i.e. all the vegetables you'd cook that are higher calorie density. So raw salad greens have 100 calories a pound. Cooked vegetables have 200, basically. The fruit has 300. And then the big starches, i.e. rice, beans, potatoes, oatmeal, all the grasses, wheat, all this stuff. When you cook it in its natural form, i.e. when you cook rice, you're going to cook it in water. You're not going to crisp it, okay? Right. And beans, you're going to cook them in water. So when you cook these things in water, you notice that they always expand. Okay, that's called gelatinization of the starch. Okay, and this is what it's going to break down some of the fibrous material and alter the starch molecules so that you can eat it. Okay, you can't eat dried beans, you'll wreck your teeth. Right. You can't eat dried rice, raw rice, you can't do it. So human beings discovered that if they put this stuff in water and they cooked it, it would gelatinize. Same thing with a potato, a baked potato. You're gelatinizing the starch with the water that's already in the potato, and it's breaking down the fibrous matrix so that you can get at the calories. Otherwise, if you eat raw potato, you can get very little calories out of a raw potato.
I'm so curious to where you're going with this, but keep going.
So here's the problem. All of those starches on average 400 calories a pound. So your stomach, as an average sized male, is designed by nature to eat, call it 4 pounds of food a day. So that being the case, if you were to eat, for example, a pound of lettuce, a pound of steamed vegetables, a pound of fruit, and a pound of starch, we would have 400 and 300 and 200 and 100, which would mean we would have 1,000 calories. We would have had 4 pounds of food. You need 2,500 calories a day. This ain't going to fly. Okay. So anybody that thinks that that was the natural diet of humanity is completely out of their gourd. There's no way in hell that was the natural food of humanity. So some of our docs say, oh, we need to eat nuts. Right. Nuts will make up for it. Right. Nuts are 3,200 calories a pound. So your stomach was designed by nature to process 2,500 calories a day through 4 pounds of food. So we're going to put in half a pound of nuts. We're going to get 1,600 calories. No. If that were true, your stomach would be massively smaller than it is. So you'd have much better tools to compete with the squirrels. So nuts were not a major force of human evolution at all. Okay. So they're big trouble with people that are having trouble with fat. And yet they have the vegan pass, and they're very nutritious. They're perfectly legitimate whole natural food, but they're a big problem, and they keep fat on people. Now, what is missing? Well, what's missing is meat. That's if you take potatoes, which are around 400 calories a pound, or beans, and then you have steak, which is 1,000 calories a pound, add 400 calories a pound and 1,000 calories a pound, and then put them together and take the average of 700. That's exactly what you find for the average calorie density of the average hunter-gatherer in Eastern Africa today. 700 calories a pound. It's like, oh, gee, the organism was designed to eat meat and potatoes. What a shock this is. Okay, now we look at that and we say, uh-oh, Doug, but we think we should cut out the meat. It's like, well, if you cut out the meat, you're in some hot water, Chief. So here's what happens to people over and over again. I've only been watching this for 30 years. But what happens is if people dutifully go on a lean whole natural foods diet, when you're way overweight, the body's so happy to shed weight that it's like it would almost just as soon fast. So you may be slightly bored, etc., but the relief of the system to just shed fat like crazy is fine. But at some point, what's going to happen is you're going to get lean enough. You are no longer going to be willing to be at a huge calorie deficit every day. So you're probably eating 2,000 calories a day right now, and you're probably shedding 500. Okay. So as a result, you can shed a pound a week, and in a year, you can shed 50 pounds right now. So, but what's going to happen is after you go through that process and shed that weight, you're going to finally reach a reasonable biological equilibrium. And now you're going to need 2,500 calories to sustain it optimally, right? Now, so now what are you going to do? Eat another pound of potatoes? The truth is that your system is not going to be interested in that. You are actually designed by nature. You will start seeking out richer calories if you haven't already. Okay.
Interesting.
So pretty soon, this is every chick in Des Moines, Iowa that calls me has her tablespoon stuck in the bottom of the peanut butter jar and can't figure out why she can't get herself to, quote, do what it is. But she's gone to therapy, and it's apparently that she needed things from her childhood because she was deprived, and that's why she can't stay out of the peanut butter jar and the Reese's.
Yeah.
Okay.
We all want to blame it on our childhood. I get it.
And you know what? That's because you don't understand what's going on in the present.
I love it.
So no, actually, your childhood has absolutely nothing to do with it. It didn't matter that you were in the Great Depression, or your mom went through the Holocaust, or that your brother, you know what I mean, was caught in a Cuban prison and starved to death, or you were. None of it has anything to do with it, any more than the fox was behind the tree 3 hours ago, but we saw him disappear over the hill, so we're not afraid of what's behind the tree. Okay. Your memory systems update, and you are dealing with the present. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that if you try to continue to eat a super lean diet, you will have shadows of forgotten ancestors that will start to tell you we are in a really shitty habitat. We're going to starve to death. We need to leave this habitat and start looking for rich food. What happened? How come we can't make a kill, for God's sakes? If we can't make a kill in this environment, we're in the wrong environment. And you know what? That's exactly what happens to people.
Wow.
They leave the environment of low calorie density vegan food, and they head to what? High calorie density vegan food. And pretty soon they're eating vegan pizza and phony meat and peanut butter sandwiches and cashew dressing and everything else under the sun. Okay. And in fact, then they have trouble with their weight, and now they're in the pleasure trap, and now they're back in high fat food. And then then they start to gain weight, and then they kick over the whole table and say, screw the whole thing, it doesn't work. And they have self-loathing over the fact that they failed because they actually succeeded for a while. And now they're like, well, I don't have what it takes. It must be my childhood. And no.
And it's funny because based on the addiction, I kept thinking that time would be sort of my friend, that from the day that I hit a reasonable, healthy body weight, I thought the more time goes by, the more I drop the addiction and the less I'm going to crave, because I find myself not craving salty things right now and appreciating the taste of things.
No.
But everything that you're saying to me makes so much sense, because I do question in my mind, not being a doctor or educated in that regard. I just keep finding in my mind that, yes, if I get to, I started at almost 270 pounds, probably closer to 280, down to 216 this morning, then thinking that I'll get to the 165, 170, which is where kind of I should be if I want to continue to hike and climb mountains and do some of the things that I want to do and be the grandfather I want to be, with a 4-year-old running on my shoulders yesterday because he was like, run, Grandpa, run.
Yeah.
So, and Grandpa's going to run for that kid no matter how much it hurts. And thank God that because of you guys, I can do it today. But my fear is, am I going to be able to hold it and do it tomorrow? That's my biggest concern.
Right. So here's
I started really kind of, let's say that I started really Joel Furman strong. Really, that's kind of the extreme where it took a lot of that original weight off, the biggest portion of the weight off, or the first portion of the weight off. But then I listened to McDougall and I listened to Goldhammer and I listen and I see that there's nuances to all of them. But I do question what happens when I'm 165, 170, or even 180, and my body needs more, you know what I'm saying? And I'm getting more athletic and I'm burning more calories. And I mean, yesterday I did an insane workout at the gym where I probably burned over 1,000 calories in 45 minutes, you know, because I'm preparing for Mount Whitney in July. And I have to work out at that level, but I'm barely eating 2,000 calories a day.
Yeah. So let me tell you. So there's a lot to that, and there's more to that story. You did not burn 1,000 calories. You burned 200 or 300.
Thank you. I wanted to find out the white lies, right?
Let me explain. Your body actually has a caloric budget that you cannot burn more calories than that budget. So your body probably cannot literally physically burn more than 2,800 calories a day. Okay. So this is a huge misunderstanding in physiology, that somehow if you just kept pushing those muscles, you keep burning calories. You would not. What would happen is, once you've hit your caloric budget biologically for that period of time, it will start to steal calories from your immune system by dialing down your body temperature. Okay, it will do all kinds of things to budget, but it cannot continue to burn calories, because you've reached a physiological limit of the way the system works. This is an extraordinary finding in physiology in the last 20 years, not well known and not taught in your basic physiology class. So anyway, bottom line is that's why it doesn't matter if you're eating rich food and you're trying to exercise it off, it won't fly. Okay, because if you consume 1,000 calories more a day than you need, and you push that body like hell, and it can maybe push back against 200 or 300 of those calories, then you hit the caloric budget, you're going to store fat. So no matter how hard you work out. So the issue is that the only reason why people would ever systematically overeat and therefore get fat is if they have fooled the mechanisms of satiation by having a diet so rich that the calibration mechanisms basically can't function. Okay, so this is similar to how it is that Walt Disney made his first movies. If you take little pictures and you have them presented very, very quickly, it looks like a continuous flow. The system can't see I think the flicker fusion rate is one frame per 32 frames a second, or whatever the hell it is. In other words, that's how he did it. Okay, that's how they make a movie, is they basically take a bunch of still shots and have them all really close together. So the sensation capability of the body has its limits, and this body is not built to actually put food in there that is 1,500 a pound and know what the hell you got. It's by the time you start to exceed, for example, the calorie density of steak, at 1,000 calories a pound, you're now pushing the limits of the system, and it can't read what it's getting very well. It might estimate it that it's 1,000 calorie pound steak. So when you eat a peanut butter sandwich, it probably estimates, it probably does a better job than that. It's a 2,200 calorie pound sandwich. It probably estimates it at 1,700. Okay, but you're gonna eat more than you thought you ate, is what's going to happen. When you make food extremely calorie dense and concentrated, then you will eat more than you thought you ate. You ate 500 calories, but you thought you ate 450. Okay, it won't miss it by a country mile, but it doesn't need to. In other words, if you systematically were to overeat by 10% every day, and you ate another 200 calories a day, you would gain, 1 or 2 pounds a month, and therefore it would indefinitely, after 5 years, you'd gain 150 pounds. It turns out that the average American woman actually gains 2 pounds a year between her 16th and her 36th birthday. So by 36, the average American woman is 40 pounds overweight. She's systematically overeaten by about 8,000 calories a year, which is only about 20 calories a day. It's a little bit. Okay. So the body compensates very well, but if you feed it too rich of a diet, it will slowly gain weight according to your genetic code. All right. So here's what I'm going to tell you. That if you try to eat a Goldhammer diet or a McDougall maximum weight loss diet, etc., you are going to run into Stone Age rebellion. And that system is going to say, we're in trouble. Okay. We can't survive in this habitat where we don't make any kills. And therefore, we're going to migrate away from that. And then pretty soon we're going to break down and we're going to be back in the pleasure trap. It's going to be a problem. So I tell people they should spike this diet with food that is reminiscent of meat. Okay. So foods that are reminiscent of meat is pasta, for example. So it's a wet starch, but it has been processed, so it's got a little higher calorie density. That's a good thing.
Chef AJ would do that, huh?
I don't know that she would. Chef AJ is probably not going to eat anything processed.
No process. I thought she would eat pasta.
She might. I don't think much. But I wouldn't have any problem with it. Okay, so
Really?
yeah. So another thing, for example, would be avocados. So
I'm a
everybody's
fan.
worried about avocados, but the truth is avocados are 900 calories a pound, which is very similar to the calorie density of steak. And if you notice, if you put a half an avocado in a salad, you feel like you really ate something.
100%.
If we put a chunk of chicken in there. See what I'm saying? It's very similar to do that.
Yeah.
And the sensation and digestion and analysis that the digestive system goes through is very similar. It feels like it got some substantial concentrated calories.
I believe it.
So that a half an avocado a day keeps Jessica from the peanut butter jar. This is how this is going to work. Also, another very good facsimile for meat that is less calorie density is tofu. Okay, so tofu is 500 calories a pound, so it's right about the same calorie density as rice. So it's not really a lightweight food. I mean, it's not really a rich food. It's actually our ancestors appear to have had digestive and satiety processes that typically the diet looks like it probably averaged around 700 calories a pound. Okay. Now, certainly if you were in a habitat that you were averaging 500 calories a pound and it looked to be real consistent, you wouldn't be unhappy about it. Okay. You'd be fine. You'd be like, well, we're not leaving here. There's apparently enough potatoes and enough beans and enough carrots and enough strawberries and enough steak now and then that we're going to stay right here, or fish. Okay. I'm going to stay right here because it's plentiful, it's fine. But you would always be like, gee, where's the rich food? Down at 500 calories a pound. Okay, so but you wouldn't necessarily leave. 400 calories a pound, you're looking to leave. We're in trouble, man. There's no animal food here. And so where on earth are we going to get our high density calories? The best we can do is these potatoes we're digging out of the ground. We're in deep trouble. Okay. So I would say that, like, I conceptually, personally, vaguely aim at 600 calories a pound. Okay, so I don't really think about it, but just in concept, that's kind of where I'm headed. So, for example, I would go to a place like Olive Garden and I would eat their pasta. That pasta is not ideal because it's white flour pasta. But white flour pasta is wheat. Okay, it's wheat that is now. It's got some of the fibrous bran and some of the good things are out of it. That's okay. I'll live with that. But it's basically wheat. It's essentially carbohydrate with some protein and no fat in it. Is what it is. It's a grass.
Yeah.
Okay. A huge percentage of human calories on Earth today are grasses. So corn is a grass. Wheat is a grass. Rye is a grass. These are huge percentages. Oats are a grass. This is a huge percentage of the human caloric intake. Okay, so the grasses are fine. John McDougall would say, great. He calls it starch. Okay, but the grasses are a component of what they have a starch molecule in them. Potatoes and all the other tubers are similar. Carrots, sweet potatoes, all that sort of jazz. That's all, 375 calories a pound. So that's fine. Beans are all about 400 calories a pound. That's all good. Okay. So the rice is a rich grass, massive consumption worldwide, 500 calories a pound. So the truth is that's all averaging around 400 calories a pound. So yeah, that's fine, but we better spike it. And so by using a processed grain like pasta. I'm bumping it up a little bit, probably about 600 calories a pound, and I'm putting some tomato sauce on there, and then I put steamed broccoli on there, and now I've got something very robust that my sensation is eating pasta is a hell of a lot more like eating steak than eating potatoes is like eating steak.
That makes sense.
I can pick
Same
up
for avocado as well, right?
totally. In other words, you're picking up evidence of greater caloric density that the system is now not feeling like it's being ripped off.
Can I tell you what I've done for the last 2 days?
Yes.
So for the last 2 days, what has been different for me is that because I heard Furman say at one point that, get rid of all your weight before you put in any complex carbs. I've gone for over 3 months without anything outside of greens, legumes, G-bombs, things like that, right? So that's really what I've been very strict with. I don't feel like I've missed a lot because I consume a lot of bulk like Chef AJ.
Yeah.
But in the last 2 days, for some reason, I just I don't know if my guard was down or for whatever reason, I bought some sweet potatoes and I had some sweet potatoes. My fear is that, to me, I start calling that a slippery slope because then I can eat a lot of sweet potato, or I can eat rice is one of my greatest fears because culturally, I'm half Cuban, half Puerto Rican. Rice is in everything. And we think that rice is what made me fat. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, Joel Furman has no idea what he's talking about.
Thank you.
Okay. And I don't know why he thinks what he thinks, but there is no evidence for what he's thinking. The complex carbohydrates are not making anybody fat. You've got 2 billion Asians eating rice and not a single one of them's fat. Okay, so this is rice is 500 calories a pound. Beans are 400 calories a pound. When you have a system that is designed to eat 700 calorie a pound food, how the hell does a 500 calorie a pound food make you fat? It is a dilution factor. It is not an enrichment factor. Okay, so McDougall is right. If you can eat all these starches you want. Now, what McDougall doesn't do, I don't think explicitly, is delineate the difference between a wet starch and a dry starch. So McDougall knows that biochemically they're the same. In other words, if you have Ezekiel bread and you have pasta, the whole wheat pasta, it's the same thing. It's the same molecules. But the difference is the Ezekiel bread has been dried out. Notice how exciting beef jerky is. It's really calorie dense. We got all the water out of it.
So the bread is a lot denser.
Bread is vastly denser.
That's where it gets dangerous. Yes.
That's where it gets dangerous. You weren't designed to be eating dried carbohydrates. You're only designed to be eating wet carbohydrates. If you eat raw corn on the cob, it could be tasty, but it's wet. If you cook it, it's still wet. The starch molecule has been broken down, and it will increase the effective caloric density of the corn by about 12%. Okay. So cooked corn literally has more calories than raw corn, but it's not a big deal because it's all around 400 calories a pound. Okay. So yeah, you need to be eating robust soups with beans and potatoes and rice or whatever the hell you want. The idea that I don't know, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but if I was a young hotshot doctor, and Furman certainly got all kinds of brains, he would be thinking, how can I make myself different from my main competitor? It's a completely reasonable. I'm going to tell him to eat salad, and I'm going to tell him eating salad, beans, and then nuts. I'm not going to tell him, don't stay away from those potatoes. He has absolutely not a single leg to stand on. Okay. He says something else about how important nuts are for your heart health. That is complete bullshit. I finally had heard enough of it, and I did a 1-hour lecture that I put on YouTube. AJ did it. I did it, explained to AJ. AJ had finally had her 1,000th person said, but Joel Furman says I have to eat nuts. And I said, I finally freaking had it. So I sat down and I just displayed the scientific evidence on this. And I don't know if Joel ever heard about it, but the bottom line is it's a complete and utter destruction of his position. He has absolutely not a single leg to stand on. Okay.
I found the one thing that I watched with McDougall and Furman sort of going at it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because that's too dramatized.
It was.
We're not laying out the data. I spent an hour laying out the data and explaining the mathematics to AJ and explaining exactly what the scientific literature shows. And it's absurd. Okay. So human beings can eat nuts. They are nutritious, but they're not superfood. All they are is rich as shit. They're full of fat. Okay.
And you talk about a slippery slope for me? Slippery.
Are you kidding me? You
Slippery.
are not designed to eat nuts.
I can eat cashews like popcorn, Dr. Lyle.
Oh, and popcorn itself is
No, don't even get me started. My wife, I can't get her off the popcorn.
1,600 calories a pound. It's a dried carbohydrate.
Wow.
Okay. So in other words, your ancestors ate wet carbs. They cooked their tubers. They had to cook their rice. They had to cook their beans. Everything they're cooking is in water and it's wet. And then when it's wet and in water, it's 400 to 500 calories a pound.
Well, Susan will love to hear that, though.
Notice that everybody wants to dry this stuff out. So everybody wants bread. Everybody wants, I get from every woman in the Midwest, which tells me, well, I say, well, where do you get your starch from? Potatoes. Gee, you're having a problem with your weight. What's going on? I'm doing everything perfectly. I put them in the air fryer. You put them in the air fryer. You put them in the air fryer and you turn a 375 calorie a pound potato into a 750 calorie a pound potato because she sucked out a bunch of the water.
But you see, I'm not an air fryer user. I don't even know how to use them, but it's become such a thing. And I wouldn't have never put that together. I would have done the same thing.
Of course. Okay. And you would prefer it because you'd sniff the calorie density as soon as it hits your mouth. Okay,
yes.
So this is to show you how sophisticated the instincts are in animals for sucking out caloric density. It turns out that when you cook food, you will make the calories, you will make the digestive process about 12% more efficient. Now it's going to turn out that when you grind food, you'll do the same thing. So when you grind steak, so if you look at raw meat, for example, if you take raw meat and then you cook it and you grind it, that will increase the effective calorie density by 25%. That's a huge deal. Okay. I just told you that you take a 16-year-old female and by her 36th birthday, you put 40 pounds on her, and all you need to do was to increase her calorie density 2% over what appropriate baseline was. So you can imagine if you start doing stuff to increase things 25%, it's a big deal. It's going to turn out that animals, which are never exposed to cooked food. Animals are not exposed to cooked food. Domesticated animals have been, but wild animals are never exposed to cooked food, except the rare event that they survive a forest fire and there happens to be some food cooked. But there's no way that they would ever have evolved to prefer cooked food, except that they all prefer cooked food. If you cook a banana, a chimpanzee likes a cooked banana better than a raw banana because the cooking makes it the calories more available. It's extraordinary. In fact, in every case of the fruits that they eat, they either prefer it cooked or they consider it equal to raw, but in no cases do they prefer raw. That's an animal who's never seen a cooked food before.
That's amazing.
So this tells you how much we're interested in processes that result in increased calorie density. Anything, grind it up. You know what I'm saying? Like any ease of digestion. Like
you're helping me understand why I gained so much weight when I was a raw vegan for about a year.
Yes.
And I was making vegetable pâtés.
Yes.
I was pâtéing everything.
That's right. And so these are all, and then you're pâtéing
walnuts with
walnuts, of course.
avocado.
If we looked at the average calorie density of that, we're going to find that it was actually pretty high.
Oh,
okay.
That's insane.
So all we really need to do for you is we need to look at this and say, listen, we ought to be aiming this thing at 600 calories a pound, which means that anything less than 600 calories a pound is totally fair game.
Yeah.
Okay. That means rice, beans, potatoes, oatmeal, bananas, all of that stuff, pasta, that's all totally in. Now, what's on the other side of that line? Well, legitimately, avocados on the other side of that line. Okay. Some other things, tofu's down at 500 calories a pound. It's a really good facsimile for meat because it happens to have a high fat content.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because when you eat it, it doesn't feel like you ate another bunch of spoonfuls of rice. It feels like you ate something that's mimicking meat. Yeah. Okay. So we add things like that. And then we also are legitimate to add the following. And that is that our ancestors undoubtedly used some dried carbohydrate. Now, they didn't make bread, okay, because bread was too complicated. That's something that doesn't happen until, 4,000 years ago. So, and any bread that they made was super coarse, okay? But our ancestors 50,000 years ago weren't eating anything like bread. The thing that they ate things like looked like tortillas.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I would have
They would take that stuff and pound it into something flat, and they might put stuff in it and eat it like a burrito.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so therefore, what's going to happen with that? They undoubtedly discovered that if you took that stuff and it was already your cooked rice and you pounded it and you put it into something and then you baked it on the fire and crisped it up a little bit, turned it into a nice tortilla, they liked it just fine, right? So I have no doubt that part of the calorie density equipment of humans actually did include some of the processing and cooking of some of these, what would have been mostly wet starches. Okay. So what would I tell you to do? I would tell you that something like corn tortillas or wheat tortillas as a mechanism for eating lower calorie density starches is fine. So a great thing would be tostadas with a couple of corn tortillas with a bunch of beans and rice and lettuce and avocado and salsa. Okay. So that's a big, exciting thing. And if we look inside of it, what do we find? The heart and soul of it looks like the rice and beans. Right. But the rice and beans, those average 450 calories a pound. That's below the average line. Okay. And we got a few ounces of lettuce, which is really great for us. That's only 100 calories a pound. Salsa on there, that's basically onions and tomatoes. That's 200 calories a pound. That's nothing. Okay. All right. What are we going to do? If all we had was a salad with lettuce and salsa and rice and beans, we'd feel ripped off. Avocado. We'd be looking around for the higher calorie density afterwards. Okay. But not if we have a half an avocado on there and we've got a couple of crispy corn tortillas. Now that whole thing feels like, as an average, it feels extremely reasonable, like I haven't been ripped off.
Well, socially, I think it would make things a little bit less challenging too, because to find things.
Yes.
I mean, I went to Las Vegas while doing this for Super Bowl with 10 guys.
Yes.
And I took my blender and I shopped at Whole Foods and I packed my hotel and I was blending in my room.
Right.
That's the only way I was able to make it. But when we're at an Italian restaurant and that food was flying in front of me, that was a hard night.
Yeah. See, for me, it's never hard because I can.
It's not hard, right? You could have gone with the pasta right there.
Any Italian restaurant, I go in and I want whatever the pasta is, and I want it smothered in marinara sauce. And if they can steam any kind of a green or anything, which they usually can't, Olive Garden will steam broccoli, so will Spaghetti Factory. So I have steamed greens all over that thing. Along with the marinara sauce and the pasta. Great. Okay. I have the big salad. I tell them light on the dressing because I know it's got some oil in it. But basically, I've got a big old salad. And that big old salad has some olives in it, which are overly rich. And I add some croutons, which are overly rich. But all together, that salad is based on 100 calorie a pound lettuce. Okay. So by the time I have that, so that whole thing together is going to be less than 500 calories a pound easily. My pasta is going to be 600 plus 250 for the sauce plus 200 for the broccoli. This whole thing is coming in less than 600 calories a pound easily. So as a result, it's like, hey, this is completely fine and consistent with the natural history. And I don't feel ripped off when I leave. I feel like I am completely in a very reasonable zone, which I am.
It's so interesting. I find so interesting that you and I know we're
don't worry about that. Go ahead.
Thank you. you're really blowing my mind in so many ways because I'm an intuitive person, I'm a guy that's from the streets.
Yeah.
From the time I left home when I was 15, and I cry a lot about this trauma.
Yeah.
But I'll let that go because you're helping me through it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Helping me through that. But what I find super interesting is that intuitively listening to you was always such a calming thing for me, because I would listen to Furman on one side, McDougall on the other, and I always found myself sort of coming back to you for reasoning. I know you're on the psychological side of the spectrum, and your training and your experience definitely prove it. And I know that some of those other doctors, you're the person that they trust and you're the person that they go to. But it's so fascinating to me that every time that I've heard you speak, I find a grounding experience for me, and I can accept the data.
Yeah.
The others, I find that there is maybe marketing or self-promoting. I'm a real estate salesperson. I understand self-promoting.
Got it.
I know what that's all about, and I can see it. And it's I'm just glad that I met you. I really am so glad.
Fantastic. The truth of the matter is, these guys, all of them, have had people do what they say and have great success.
Yes.
What they don't do is that they don't see what happens a year later. Okay. And the thing is, I'm the guy that people call
when it didn't work.
And the thing is that where is this mythical group of people that keeps doing what these people say and do it perfectly? It's like, though, that mythical group of people does not exist, because everybody's veering off course in no time. Okay. And why are they doing that? Because they set the bar too high. Okay. And they don't understand, there's a hell of a difference between 400 calories a pound and 600 calories a pound in terms of the human palate. There's a big difference. Okay. There's a big difference if I'm going to eat a salad or I'm going to eat a salad with half of an avocado in it. There's a hell of an experiential difference between those two things. There's a big difference between eating rice and beans and lettuce and tomato on a plate or wrapping it in a white flour tortilla and having it baked. It's like, suddenly we increase the calorie density and my brain feels like it got something that remotely resembles the calorie density had I been eating meat with this meal, which is exactly what I was designed to be eating. Okay. So it's extraordinary to me. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to say it and get it said. Chef AJ, who's a good friend of mine, she has her thing, eat left of the red line. The red line is 560 calories a pound. The problem with that is that would cause you to have an average that would be around 280.
Really low.
No. The red line is the center point. And so if you realize, okay, well, what should I be looking out for? Well, I shouldn't be looking out for pasta at 600 calories a pound. And I shouldn't be looking out for avocado at 900. I should be looking out for nuts at 3,000. Yeah. Those are pushing that thing way out there. That's going to get me into trouble. So I'll have people that are 15 pounds overweight, can't understand why they can't lose the last weight. And they tell me that they're putting cashew sauce, on their stuff. It's like, well, that's the reason. Well, it's supposed to be so healthy. It's like, yeah, it's healthy, but it's really, really fat. And your ancestors didn't eat food that rich.
I love that cashew Alfredo sauce on raw food pasta,
Of course.
Cashew Alfredo sauce, man.
Yes.
It's the same calorically, it's the same as Alfredo sauce.
It's more.
It's more?
Yeah. Okay. So the Alfredo sauce is built around cheese at 1,700. Dashes at 3,200. It's like, so you've got all these vegans scratching their heads and frustrated, and also frustrated with themselves and thinking that there's something wrong with them. And the answer is no. You can go too far and then rebel. No. And so we need to be knowledgeable enough to understand that if you're going to pull a massive source of food for human natural history out of the diet, which I think is a good thing to do. Human beings can eat meat and they can choke it down. And even the modern meat, they survive. But the truth of the matter is, you're quite a bit better off without it health-wise, okay? So we want to put plant foods in there, but we're going to have to be reasonable about what those plant foods need to look like, and also understand what they shouldn't look like, okay? So that's sort of the last mile, is to understand that. And the problem is a lot of these docs are purists, so they aren't facing that problem. And then they all squabble about how it is that everybody has failures and nobody can figure out why, and everybody points at the other guy's program. But the truth of the matter is, no, that isn't where the problem is. The problem is that you must find an intermediate ground. And if you find that intermediate ground, then you can have a great deal of inner peace. If your weight starts drifting up that point, you realize the job isn't to go from, if I've drifted to 750, it isn't to go back down to 400 and go cold turkey. It's to get yourself to 650. So if you look at your body, like, how tall are you?
5'9".
5'9". So 5'9", probably reasonably build, probably somewhere between 160, 170 plus or minus. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know that at 180, if you're sitting at 180, the diet's a little too rich. So what do? Well, you can crash it down if you want, go on a water fast. That's fine. But the truth is, you could also say, you know what? Truth is, I've probably been up at 750 calories a pound. I ought to be driving it down to 650. If you drive it down to 650, that means that you're going to probably start shaving 100 calories a day off the diet, which means that's about 3,000 calories a month or 2 pounds a month, which means in 4 or 5 months, we will have shaved the 10 pounds off. We just let it happen. All we did was make slightly different choices. We did not try to monitor how much food we were eating. We didn't try to exercise off like a fanatic. We didn't try to fast it off to get rid of it. We just knew that the fundamental problem was the diet was 100 calories a pound too rich. So we needed to shift that away from there and then just let it go. Okay. And when you finally get to 170 pounds from doing it the right way rather than any crash way, then like the idea, like anybody that says, well, don't eat that until then, and then you can just start to, like, fuck that. We need to be eating exactly what we think you should be eating now. And then we let that diet move you to wherever it moves you. If it moves you to 195 and it stops, then you and I have a conversation and we say, all right, where the hell is the excess calorie density? Because we know it's there.
So that was good. That was leading me to my next question for you.
Yeah.
Are you cool to do one of these with me a couple of times a month?
A couple of times a month would be a lot.
Okay. Once a month?
You can do as many as you want.
You're
Okay?
amazing.
I
think it would be a great journey to take with you. I would be just overjoyed.
Oh yeah, but this is no problem at all. But generally what's speaking is this was a big educational process. From here, you probably just need half hours. Okay?
Good. We can do half hours. Perfect.
Half hours, whatever makes sense to you. But a half an hour makes a lot of sense. But now that you know, what I like to do is to give people some new ideas and new information. Then you go fight it out with yourself for a while, see what happens.
Yes.
If it works, great, wonderful. If you're struggling, then we talk about, we diagnose why are we having the problem? Now, we know why we're having the problem is because you're an animal stuck in a zoo with overly rich food. So now we start figuring out how the hell we're going to maneuver around those problems. But at least now we know that what you were walking into is putting the bar too high. You're getting marched right into that by very well-meaning fanatics. And we were going to run into a problem, and then we're going to be in a crisis because we're not going to be able to live up to those expectations. So now we've got this thing settled properly. Tofu, avocados, and corn tortillas, pasta. When we start to incorporate that kind of stuff in there, we make this thing much more reminiscent of the calorie density of our natural history and hopefully give you a lot more stability.
I think you're going to make my wife so much happier too.
Good. Just beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's a win-win-win.
All
I
right.
thank you so much. And
My
I'll look up the calendar. I'll get them going. I'll set them all up and I'll take care of everything.
No worries. All good.
You're amazing.
Fantastic, Jerry. Great to meet you.
Pleasure is all mine, doctor. Thank you.